Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow. We are back here in studio finally for another fun-filled, action-packed episode of Iowa's premier conservative podcast. We are joined here in studio with John Hendrickson and Chris Ingstad. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
John's already laughing. We're real close to losing him.
Well,
I'm just excited to be back.
I know. I am too. So. We've had multiple listeners wonder if we're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's been a while. So we had technical difficulties on the last podcast episode, and those have not resolved yet. So we're back in here trying to see if yours truly can figure it all out.
They're calling it the most technologically challenged podcast. That's not a bit. We are
not.
Very upfront.
And if you're audio tech expert as yours truly, we're in big trouble because I don't get paid for those skills.
Yeah,
not quite sure what it is I get paid for around here, but yet here we are. Okay, so we had an extended break. Did y'all have a good break?
I did, yeah.
You did?
It was nice.
You came back, you looked rested and recharged when you came back in. Yeah.
It was, got to be in the fresh air of Minnesota, so.
Good.
That's always
Is there snowpack yet?
Not yet, no.
Really?
No.
Okay, interesting. All right, well, good. Well, a lot has happened on a number of fronts since we were together last. I want to check in briefly on the presidential race in Iowa. So I think since the last time we were recording, we had already seen the Governor Reynolds endorsing Ron DeSantis for president, but also have since seen Bob Vander Plaats from the Family Leader endorsing Governor DeSantis. But then just yesterday, Americans for Prosperity nationally endorsing Nikki Haley for president. So John, I'm going to go to you first. Where do you think we're at with all of this?
I think it's going to be interesting because we'll soon see whether these endorsements will have an impact. I mean, the polls so far show that former President Trump still has a commanding lead in the caucuses, but I think things are still very fluid. And one thing I would say is that I think the Trump campaign, because they have been making more campaign appearances in Iowa, are starting to realize that they can't just take it for granted. So I mean, I think it's either the end of this week or early next week. President Trump is going to be in Cedar Rapids, and so I think they'll have more events as well. So, I
think he's got an event in Ankeny as well.
Oh, okay.
But I could be I could be wrong about that.
But I mean these are certainly from national media, there's been a lot of talk of these endorsements, but from my perspective, and I don't know if I'm right on this, I just don't see if there's a lot of people undecided, so I don't know if these endorsements are going to sway a lot of people.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, do you think these endorsements matter?
I don't think they matter enough to close the gap with former President Trump. I don't think they harm anybody.
Yeah.
My take is there is still an enthusiasm gap between Trump supporters and supporters of everyone else. Mm-hmm. I've spent a lot of time lately traveling rural Iowa and frankly rural Missouri. I still see a lot of Trump signs. Yeah. I don't see Biden. I see some that say unkind things about President Biden. I don't see Vivek signs. I don't see DeSantis signs. I don't see Haley. I don't see any of that. And I know Nikki Haley's picked up some momentum. It feels to me like people are landing on their support for Nikki Haley by default. I don't know that they could actually say, you know what, yes, this is my candidate. This is why I am supporting her. I like where she's going. It seems like they've just sort of, they want an alternative to Trump, and they've landed on Nikki Haley by default.
I think that's...
And so I don't know how that...
I think that's a good take. I agree. I don't think that endorsements typically matter. They can indicate that there's some amount of credibility to a campaign or maybe some amount of momentum to a campaign, but I've never really come across voters that say, you know what, my state legislator is voting for candidate X, so I think I will too. It's just not how people think about it.
If I was going to add one caveat to this, it might be when Governor Kim Reynolds puts her mind and might behind an idea, and in this case, maybe a candidate, like I wouldn't bet against her.
Well,
can the Governor Reynolds endorsement totally close the gap? I don't know, but I would not be surprised if that eventually pays off and moves the needle.
And I think that's the difference too on this one is that Governor Reynolds didn't just endorse Governor DeSantis. I mean, she's out doing events with him. She is actively campaigning, and maybe most importantly is her face on the TV ads they're on right now. She has gone to bat, and she's gone beyond endorsement to actually advocating actively for him. So I do think that one matters. There is a question of how much of the Americans for Prosperity, how many dollars come with that, and organizational strength. And I don't quite know the answer to that. Obviously, they spent a lot of money so far on specifically mail about how Donald Trump can't win, although I think the polls maybe say something different. But so that's an unknown is how much actually comes with the endorsement.
Yeah, Channel 8 was reporting, I believe yesterday, the day before, whenever the endorsement news broke, that I think it'll be next week they're going to start a massive TV campaign with ads on behalf of Haley. But I want to just comment on something Chris said, but I think it's very important in regard to the enthusiasm that you mentioned about former President Trump. And I think, because I've seen the same thing. I've seen the same thing here in Iowa, and also I've seen the same thing when I go back home. And there's very much people are still enthusiastic about former President Trump, and I think and Newt Gingrich kind of reminded me of this when he was on the Laura Ingraham program several weeks ago, and basically saying that Trump's a leader of a movement, and while these others are candidates. I mean, Trump is not just a former president, but he's very. It's very interesting because he's actually leading a national movement, and that's still appealing to a large part of the electorate. Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to keep in mind.
I think that is too. I think the biggest winner in the AFP endorsement of Nikki Haley is Donald Trump, because I think the only way, and I think I've been fairly consistent on this, the only way that Donald Trump doesn't become the Republican nominee again is for there to be one singular alternative that the sort of anti-Trump Republicans would rally around. And I think for that to work, that candidate would have to be a known, dependable conservative. I think as long as the sort of not Trump vote is split in any way at all, then President Trump's on his way to a third Republican nomination. So I think that's the big winner in all of this. So, okay, well, very good. Yeah, and it's around the corner. We're about 2 months out. So we keep saying there's going to be a lot of twists and turns, and that keeps being proven true. Mm-hmm. So, okay, good. Next up, a couple of more local Iowa things. I want to talk about DART, because we have talked about DART, which is Des Moines Area Regional Transit. And the Metro Central Iowa communities all pay into, well, the ones that participate, into funding public transit for Central Iowa. So in the news last night, the city of Grimes has decided to no longer participate in DART, to the tune of, what was that, Chris?
$650,000.
$650,000 a year that let's be clear, the taxpayers of Grimes were contributing to participate in DART.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, I think you can have a conversation about the value of public transit in the suburbs and getting people around. But whether it's worth $650,000. But that's not the fun part.
No.
Chris, I'm going to let you, because I just giggled when I saw this. So
yeah, I giggled as I forwarded it to you. 13 unique riders. Literally 13 individuals from Grimes took DART last year. Now, some of these 13 individuals took it more than once.
Yeah.
But it literally served 13 people.
I mean, just to give you an idea of how small of a universe of people that is, that's fewer people than listen to the ITR Live podcast. Yeah. I mean, this is not a lot of people.
you could provide a pretty nice new car for each one of those riders at that dollar amount.
Well, I told my wife when I saw this on the news last night, I will drive them all myself. Give me a call. For $650,000, I will show up. I will keep the car washed. It will be warm when we get there. I'll even have the Wi-Fi package turned on so they can surf the internet, and it'll be great. I'll bring snacks and drinks, and it'll be a great time. For $650,000, it'll be wonderful. Yep. So I suggested, maybe we need to work on this, and nobody else in the pre-production meeting seemed to like my idea of local government helmet stickers. It's like, have you seen this where, college football teams, I think Ohio State is probably the most famous for it. You do something good, you get a sticker on the back of your helmet. So I think we need local government helmet stickers.
Yes, good for them for evaluating. So you know what, this isn't really worth it. And
right.
and I hope that $650,000 for 13 people, I hope that's a pretty obvious decision. And again, kudos to them for making it. Right. But it does make you wonder how many other these things, the other programs that we fund or services we fund that we sort of take for granted, under a little bit of scrutiny, may show up in sort of a similar value or lack thereof for the taxpayer.
But, I guess kudos to the city of Grimes for trying to find a way to save taxpayer money. Good. Another thing that we talked about this morning, it was a legislative forum, like a pre-session event that was put on. These happen all over the state. They're put on by Chambers of Commerce. That's who usually did them here in central Iowa. The Greater Des Moines Partnership would have one. And this was Dubuque area leaders. I don't know who actually sponsored it, but they had the city, the county, the school board there, and invite their local legislators come in and talk about what they see coming up in the legislative session, and a chance for these officials to, I guess, present their thoughts to the legislators. So it's just kind of a rite of passage. But anyway, so this is a write-up in the Dubuque Telegraph-Herald about what happened at the one in Dubuque, because they had several legislators there. I know there's a picture here of Senator Kelker, who was at our Cedar Rapids event. Good friend of the organization, good friend of Iowa taxpayers. But also had Representatives Chuck Eisenhart and Lizzie James, Democrats, Senator Kelker, and Senator Dan Zumbach from Ryan, rural area. So anyway, I thought a couple quotes in here were interesting, that obviously there some frustration with what happened on property taxes last year. But the Dubuque mayor, I think, and it's always hard to tell exactly what they think from afar, written in a news article, but was really kind of saying, could you maybe not go any further than you did last year, which I thought was kind of interesting, and that a lot of these other mayors, city administrators seem to be still complaining and hoping that the legislature will retreat from that property tax bill last year. They're not going to do that. That bill is law, and they may clean it up a little bit, but they're not going backwards on that. But anyway, but the superintendent there, and I want to get you guys' take on these quotes here, because I need a break because I've been talking nonstop for about 5 minutes now. Complaining about the first one is a quote from the school superintendent, and this is a swipe at educational savings accounts. At a time that public schools' dollars fall short, the state cannot afford to fund programs without siphoning funds away from public schools. John, take it away.
Well, as Reagan said, there they go again. I mean, it's a tired argument that Democrats and public school officials make, regardless. And one thing I've seen about ESAs in other states.
I'm sorry, just before we go fact check, John, how much did this year's budget cut funding to public education?
0.
Oh, they didn't cut this year?
They didn't cut anything.
What about last year?
Nothing.
Well, the year before, how much did they
Nothing.
cut? So they keep pouring more money into public education?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say that states that have ESAs, their public education budgets are continuing to increase.
You mean like Iowa's has?
Yes. Yeah. And
so, because to be perfectly clear, because I'm kind of fired up about this one, as you can maybe tell. Public education in the state of Iowa continues to get increases year after year after year. And as a percentage of the state budget continues to grow at a faster rate than it is crowding out the rest of the state budget already.
Yeah. And if I should have looked this up, but I think it's 54%, 56% of the budget already, public education, and if you combine health and human services, that gets close to 80% of the general fund budget. And so, and as we talked about this morning, it's only in government that if you slow the growth of spending, it's seen as a cut by some people.
I have no doubt that the amount of funding that these schools, specifically in this case Dubuque, receive from the state is less than they would like to have.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's true for
please show me a business or a person who
doesn't wish they had more.
That's right.
Well, the other thing,
well, you know what? We could buy a new car if we had more money.
And the other thing is that
drive people around from Grimes.
That's right.
Just because you keep pouring money in education doesn't mean you're going to get a better product.
Right. And we've been over that.
Yeah.
I want to, but this idea that we're siphoning or will siphon funds away from public schools, Chris.
How?
Exactly how? And I think the state cannot afford to fund programs without siphoning funds away. Well, last I checked, the state's got a $1 billion plus surplus. I think the state can afford to fund any number of things. They choose to be restrained, right? Yeah. And so if the state wants to make a determination that this certain program is worthwhile, it can be funded. What the state's telling you is that, no, we think you can make do with this.
Well, somehow Dubuque in particular, their enrollment trend is actually down 5%.
Yeah.
So they're losing students. By the way, that's before any ESA kicked in. Right. So something's already going on where they're not keeping their enrollment up. Just some quick looks. And you can find a lot of this information at ITR Local, by the way.
ITRlocal.org.
But, Dubuque's per pupil expenditures, it's actually above the statewide average. So whatever you think about how you're funded, Dubuque, you're actually spending more money than the rest of the state in that sense. So again, these arguments, and by the way, John, everything that you guys said about the percentage of the state budget that's consumed by education, the same is true when you talk about property taxes, right? Education is the biggest consumer of property tax dollars too. Mm-hmm. So whatever you think about this, the reality is we keep pumping more money and you keep spending more, right? And if some of that's going down because you're losing students, for whatever reason, well, you're not keeping them there.
That's right. It's just this mindset. We talked about it, that it is about the focus is on dollars going into the government system and not about the outcome and not about the child and this idea that these are all public dollars. No, they're not. They're taxpayer dollars. And anyway, I want to move on to the next quote here. This one is, if I could get the...
Is this the one where I hear the bugles playing and see the flag waving?
I can barely get the recording to work on the Magic Podcast machine here, much less the sound pads. So in your mind, listeners, I want you to imagine that there's some patriotic music playing in the background. Maybe the Marine Corps band, maybe John Philip Sousa.
Battle Hymn of the Republic. I don't know.
Think like a presidential inauguration and a parade. Here's the Dubuque school superintendent. While it's too often popular these days to devalue government and those who serve within it, we are all essential players in our democracy.
Wow. Thank you for your service.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And I John, you're going to have to remind me, because I thought I had a couple pretty good takes in the pre-production meeting on this one. Are we devaluing government?
No.
Now, I will say there's a part of this that's absolutely true, is that I do not have the same faith in government that others do. And I don't think that it should be all things to all people like some others do. And it's not as big a part of my life, nor do I want it to be as big a part of my life. But I'm not devaluing the essential functions that it provides.
Yeah.
Is that fair? I feel like I was a little more fired up earlier.
No.
Well, yes. If I'm going to choose who to give priority to, it's going to be the taxpayer or the citizen or the private business, not government itself.
And that comes back to the last part of this. We are all essential players in our democracy. Well, okay, fine. But the essential player is the individual citizen.
Yeah.
and the amount and the money that you're extracting from them to fund your government interest. That's the essential player.
Yeah.
Everyone else is replaceable.
Here's the problem for them. And again, like we say this a lot and we mean it. There's lots of good elected officials. There's lots of good staff members.
We gave a
in
helmet
government.
sticker to the people in Grimes, Chris.
Yes, and I think we meant that sincerely. Like good. They made a great decision, and that's helpful. But what's going on with these people is the legislature, Governor Reynolds, organizations like us, maybe to a lesser extent, have been able to stand up for the taxpayer in recent years, and they've been able to put some brakes on or rein in the growth of budgets and power of government, and they don't like it. And now they're kicking and screaming and saying, well, what about us? And for too many years, the taxpayer, the sovereign citizen, was the one left saying, what about us? And now they actually have a voice. Now somebody's in office and is listening to them.
And you made the point very well this morning, Chris, that is the win.
Yeah.
The win here is that these conversations are happening.
Yes, we should be making our case to legislators as we represent our members. Government officials should be making their case to legislators. We want those discussions going on, want those debates happening. We want elected officials to have kind of all the perspective, and they can make the decisions. And that's a really good spot to be in.
Yep. Okay. Moving on, John, there was one other thing you and I were going to talk about. We're going to save that for another day because I want to get to one other thing to kind of close. This is also going back to Axios Des Moines this morning, Chris, which we read, and this is their kind of last thing at the end, fun thing to go, authentic Des Moines-isms. Oh, did you see this?
I didn't read that part.
Okay, it's these little things that they think are sort of like unique little Des Moines kind of things, right?
Axios gets released about breakfast time at my house, right. And I don't always.
So here's some things, and I don't know, some of them, maybe they're fair, but that a traffic snarl is any metro drive that takes more than 15 minutes. Yeah. Sort of an idea that traffic's really not that bad here, but some of these really are. I mean, portable bathrooms are called kaibos, and I never even heard that word before until I'd moved to Des Moines. Oh. But growing up in Northeast Iowa, they were porta potties. The one that's not on here that I think is a very unique Des Moines thing is that Beggar's Night. Kids don't trick or treat on Halloween. They trick or treat the night before. That doesn't happen anyplace else. So anyway, there's Axios, if you're tuning in to kind of get my feedback on your newsletter, because I'm absolutely sure that you're not. There's my offering, is Beggar's Night, is my Des Moines-ism. But I kind of wondered, ITR podcast listeners, when you think about, from a taxpayer standpoint, about Des Moines-isms, what do you think about? Do you think about economic development incentives?
I do, actually.
Do you think about TIF? Do you think about, I just wondered, is there all kinds of fun things we can think about the city of Des Moines? Do you think about, a whole bunch of cronyism and machine politics? And
well, I do. And Chris, that's, partly is because they're the newly elected mayor, who I hope she does a good job. We want the city of Des Moines to flourish.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing.
And there's a lot of great things happening in Des Moines.
Yeah.
Do not get me wrong.
But when she says, we want to fill up office space in downtown Des Moines, good goal. Think about all the economic incentives we can offer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Okay. We're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on whitewater rafting down the middle of town, but whatever.
Does she realize?
Whatever.
Does she realize, by the way, that a number of those vacancies, like a lot of those square feet that are now vacant, were tenants that formerly received some of those very same economic incentives?
Wasn't enough to keep them, but even more is going to draw them back.
It doesn't put them. It doesn't put roots down. It's a transaction.
That's right. That's right. And it's, look, I would love, to your point, to see a return to downtown.
Yes.
There aren't as many restaurants open down there, especially at the lunch hour. It's just, I want to have a very vibrant, healthy downtown Des Moines. I think that is good for the metro, good for Iowa. So, but anyway, I just kind of got a kick out of that. I think listeners, that's John. I don't know if you got any Des Moines-isms, because I know how often you like to go downtown.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Usually you need a ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As Chris knows.
But look,
that's a
as somebody who has circled the block waiting to pick you up downtown, I can attest to that, John. Anyway, listeners, if you've got a good Des Moines-ism from a taxpayer standpoint, we'd love to hear about it. And that'll be fun. All right. Well, that's all the time we got for today, gentlemen. Hopefully we can do this once more than every week and a half, because we've got a lot to talk about leading up towards the end of the year and into the caucuses. And we really haven't even spent a lot of time talking about what's happening in this coming legislative session.
Yeah.
So that's some other things that we're going to have to really dig into a little more deeply.
There's
So
some good stuff coming up, I think.
all right. Very good.
Now watch your mailboxes next month, because we got some legislative previews and stuff coming out.
Yeah, no, it's great. So, all right, well, that's what we got for today. Again, if you haven't checked us out on YouTube, Rumble, all the different platforms we're on, I'd love for you to do so. Don't forget to like and subscribe, tell your friends, and with that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.